Jesus is crucified. Mark 15:21-39. A man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, happened to be coming in from the countryside, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. He was the father of Alexander and Rufus. They brought him to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. Then they crucified him. They divided his clothes by casting lots. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. A sign above Jesus' head stated the reason for his condemnation: the King of the Jews. They crucified 2 criminals with him, one on each side. The passers-by mocked him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha ha! You who can destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself now and come down from the cross." The chief priests and the scribes also mocked him among themselves, saying, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is supposed to be the Messiah, the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, then we will see and believe." Even the criminals who were crucified with him insulted him. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. Then Jesus cried out loudly, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani?" which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. Someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and offered it to him to drink. They said, "Wait, let us see if Elijah comes to take him down." But Jesus cried out loudly and breathed his last. Then the temple curtain was torn in 2 from top to bottom. When the centurion who stood in front of him saw how he died, he said, "Truly this man was the Son of God." We see crosses everywhere around people's necks, on church buildings, in sports, on tattoos. They are icons and symbols. Companies spend millions to be recognized. The cross has stood the test of time. But it is also dangerous because its familiarity makes it unknown. We see something so often that we think we understand what it is. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. Yes, we know this. We've seen this billboard many times along the road. You might ask if there is anything else or new. Yes, there is. First, a question. How often do you slit a goat's throat? You didn't see that coming, did you? Now, another one. Do you regularly come to church here on a Saturday night to sprinkle yourself with bull's blood? Another one. Do you ever strangle a bird and place it on an altar for good luck? Of course not. You've never done it. We don't even think about offering animals. Exactly. In Hebrews 9, we read that Jesus offered himself for our sins. For thousands of years, most people in the ancient world offered animals to keep the gods appeased. Whoever controlled the sun and the rain, you wanted to keep that one happy. Pregnant women, war. Have everything on your side. So when the writer of Hebrews says, Jesus is the last sacrifice you will ever need, it was revolutionary. It was unprecedented. Sacrifices cost time, money, and anxiety, and now it's all gone. Can you just imagine what happened inside them? But there is more. In Colossians, Paul wrote that God reconciled himself with all things, whether on earth or in heaven, and made peace through his blood. Reconciliation is a word from the world of relationships, where people who were stuck could resolve things, and now they have come together again. Paul took something we experience in relationships and said, this is what happened on the cross. God made peace with the world and all things. But then, in Romans 3, Paul wrote that we receive righteousness through the grace of Jesus. Righteousness is a term used in courts by judges and prosecutors. Paul inherently said that Jesus paid the price for our sins so that we could be free. So what is it then, when Jesus died on the cross? Was it the end of sacrifices? Or the reconciliation of all things? or the price paid to let sinners go free? But then, in 2 Timothy 1, Paul wrote that Jesus destroyed death, and John wrote in chapter 5 of his first letter that this was the victory that set the world free. Victory and destruction are terms for war. Here the cross is Jesus winning the war against evil. Then Paul wrote in his letter to the Ephesians, "We have redemption through his blood." Redemption is a word from the business world. To redeem or release a debt means something gains new value. So back to the question, what happened on the cross? Was it the end of sacrifices? Or the reconciliation of all things? Or the price paid to let sinners go free? Or a war that was won? Or the recovery of something lost? What is it then? Which perspective is the right one? Why all these different explanations? For these first Christians, something great and life-changing happened on the cross. So they tried to explain its meaning in a language their audience understood. They look at the world around them, pictures, experiences, and metaphors familiar to their audience, and then they ultimately say it is like an accused going free, a relationship reconciled, something lost being redeemed, a war being won, a final sacrifice made so that no one needs to do it again, an enemy being loved. The point is not to bind the cross to one specific metaphor, but to look you in the eye and communicate this astonishing event that their hearers would understand. The point then, beloved, in that time just like today, is Jesus. Jesus is where life is. The story of the cross does not stop in the first century. Our world also has different pictures today. You see, you and I also have crosses to bear, and this cross helps us bear our own crosses. Why? The essence of the cross is that it cannot be chosen. If it can be chosen, it is not the cross or a cross. You cannot plan with the cross about how you are going to suffer. Then you are busy with your ego, like when you steer the ship. This is why you should distrust any heroic deeds in life. I do it for God or country and fatherland. Yes, you probably do it for yourself, but you hide it behind God and the fatherland for the status it gives you in this fatherland of yours. Crosses you choose are seldom a cross. You see, the cross must come, as in Jesus' case, uninvited, unexpected, and unwanted. There is this conflict of, it is not fair, this is not right, why me? You see, that is why I question, that is the conflict of the cross. It is not the suffering itself, but the struggle with what seems unnecessary and unfair. You see, that is what kills you. And I don't want to be naive about it, because I know when it comes my way, we are not talking about days, but weeks and months, even years. I don't want to take this lightly. But the cross must be uninvited, unexpected, and unwanted. It must feel unfair and wrong. And why me? It must, for it to really be a cross. That is exactly the character of the cross. And your mind will fight it for weeks, months, and even years or a lifetime. The crucifixion of Jesus had all these tragic, unfair, unnecessary characteristics attached to it. So we as humans cannot move or speak outside this reality. So suffering teaches you solidarity with other people's suffering. You must be somewhere where it hurts a lot to embrace the pain of others, where you don't want to wake up or get up. You must know how painful it is to get hurt to have any empathy with people. The word empathy was not in our vocabulary until the last 100 years. You realize that if the word empathy is not in our language, it limits our capacity to really feel what the other person feels. So instead of just being in my body, I can for a moment be inside your body. So if this word was not really part of our language for many centuries, it doesn't take much to see that the cross easily developed into this mechanical concept of just another religious thing that nice and good ladies hang in their foyers for decoration. Instead, Jesus comes as an invitation in solidarity with human suffering. That is how I read the cross, God's absolute identification and solidarity with every person who has ever lived and who will live. Unjustly imprisoned, abused, murdered, dying alone, or whatever, it is God's unity with that person in that moment and His promise about what He will do with it. So when we as Christians say that we are saved by the death and resurrection of Jesus, then it is ordinary Christian language. When I ask Christians what exactly it means, they almost never know what to say. They are not bad people, it is just one of those cliches. So the important thing is not death or resurrection, but the word "and." We are saved by the death and resurrection. In other words, it is to say yes to both. First, the death, oh dear, and trust that even this bad will lead to resurrection. That is salvation. You are actually indestructible. Nothing can destroy you now. That is the salvation of the world. Jesus died. Jesus rose. And Jesus will come again. But I rarely meet Christians, Catholic, Protestant, Charismatic, who know what it means. We push Jesus into this reconciliation thing, which is a legal transaction. You don't fall in love with the legal transaction. Instead, God is in an immediate personal solidarity and unity with the suffering I am experiencing now. You will fall in love with this Jesus. For this Jesus you will give your life. For this Jesus you will change your life. I think our human capacity to allow God to love us in this way and to love God Himself in this way will develop increasingly in our world, because we are moving increasingly away from a legal understanding of God to a participatory understanding of the gospel. So what is true of Jesus is true of anything and everything. God goes out of His way to say, I am part of you and one of you. I am the Son of Man. I am the everyman. Look at me, and you will see how to do the human thing, which is to combine it with the divine thing. And I do it for you, and then I will tell you, follow me. Why would anyone ever reject such a faith? It is not stuck in a denomination. It is for everyone. No one will reject it. So the question today is, what does the cross mean to you? What does your own cross-bearing mean for the world? Beloved, I greet you on this dark day in our history with the hope that light will rise. Until tomorrow. Soli Deo Gloria.